everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be doing my October wrap up and my November TBR. So this is up a little bit later than when I typically upload my wrap ups and everything. It's just been a really bad couple of weeks. On Halloween we had to put down Tucker, who is our family dog, as you've probably seen a lot of the vlogs that I've done and everything, and the one that came out in November on the 9th was filmed a couple weeks before we had to put it down, and I honestly was destroyed. Like, I needed some time. Like, I am so cried out that I can't cry anymore, and I needed some time, and I'm still grieving and I'm still really upset about everything. Even though it was his time, it was extremely difficult and having to go through that, and I needed a little break in combination with the results of the election happening a couple days after that. I feel like I just needed a little bit of a break. So this is why it's a little bit later, and I think maybe over the next couple weeks I'll be taking a break with uploading and everything too. I think I just need a break and just kind of focus on you know, my mental health and everything like that. So I do have like some things to look forward to in December. Like, I'm getting married on the 7th, but I feel like that's the thing that's keeping me going right now, is like I have such a great time to look forward to with my family and friends, but it's still like my heart is broken, not only with Tucker but with the election as well, and it's just been stressful and anxious and all these things. So it has not been a good time. So I feel like I just needed a break and this, like, a little bit of space, so there won't be a lot of posting going on this month. So I hope you guys understand. But overall, in October I read 4 books, and they're kind of all over the place in terms of genre. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, I ended up reading Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio, and I had really high expectations going into this one, and because I really loved If We Were Villains. I thought that was really well written, and this is her most recent release since then. This is her second kind of published book, and this is a novella. It is fairly short, and it follows these group of people who only kind of meet at night. Basically, they are kind of night owls, and they just happen to cross paths with each other like almost every night on their smoke breaks in this graveyard, and there is this kind of mystery that comes about through there. But I felt like I was just really disappointed with this one. I felt like it ended really abruptly. This was just a preview to what was to come over the next couple weeks, having read this in early October. But basically, like, it was just disappointing. I'm looking at like my notes here, because as I said, I feel like I've just been in my own little world right now. But it just like ended abruptly. Like, I felt like the characters weren't really fleshed out. You got like a chapter dedicated to one of each of the characters, but I felt like we didn't really get to know them really well. I felt like there were some parts that were suspenseful, but it didn't really go anywhere. Like, there wasn't really, it just fell really flat to me, and it left me wanting more. Like, I was really disappointed with this. I felt like it was a good Halloween read in particular, but it was just overall really disappointing. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I don't even recommend this. If you like If We Were Villains, I would just recommend skip this or get this from the library. Save your money. Like I said, because I didn't really enjoy this at all. Like, not worth the read at all. It was just not great. Next, I ended up listening to the audiobook for this, which I think is the way to do with Stanley Tucci's books. I have all his physical copies, but I've always listened to them via audiobook, just because I do really love his voice. And it is What I Ate in 1 Year, and it's basically kind of like a food diary of everything that he kind of ate over the course of 2023. And I would just be really nervous if I was feeding, like, you know, presenting him a dinner. Like, I would be really stressed out because he is so picky with his food. So it was interesting. Like, he is a little pretentious sometimes with food or like other things, what is going on with his hair, but like only he can get away with it and make it come away with charm, charm. So I'm just gonna like pull my notes here, because like I said, it's been a rough time, but like I said, it was really fun, it was really enjoyable, and I think the audiobook is the way to go. There is like one part here too that I wanted to tab, because he talks about like a restaurant in Dublin, and that's where we're going on our honeymoon, so I wanted to, and he spoke highly of it, so we'll add that to our list of things to do when we're in Ireland, which is exciting. And it made me hungry as well. Like, some of the food he was talking about was so rich in its imagery that I felt like I could taste it. Like, it was really fun, and I really enjoy the way he discusses food. And kind of one of the themes that I really enjoyed was like connecting food with memories, and how a lot of, you know, food is really much tied to socialization, or like whether it's, you know, a meal that you had with your parents growing up, or you just like this was a meal that you ate when you had like a really big celebration, those type of things, and kind of connecting the relationship with food with these memories, I thought was really interesting to kind of explore that. So I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Definitely would go with the audiobook. You could probably read this too, but I think it's just, the audiobook is the way to go with Stanley Tucci stuff. I just love his voice. So I think if you are a foodie, I think if you really like searching for Italy, I think you would like this. So I don't know if I mentioned, but I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Most of my reading in October was dedicated to reading this chonker of a book, which is Bringer of Dust by J.M. Miro, and this is the sequel to Ordinary Monsters, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed. This book, it is very chonky, so it is very tense, but I enjoyed every single second of it. It definitely gives you a much bigger expansion of the world. This takes place in the mid to late 1800s, where we follow these group of children who have some sort of power to them, and it kind of leads to this bigger like world kind of building, corruption, all these other things. I think it's just best to kind of go into it like blind, and this one is obviously a continuation of the first one, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but I felt like this one did a really good job of the expansion of the world. I feel like in particular with the first one, you're really kind of focused on what is going on with these characters within the school, and you do get some traveling with some of the characters in past plots, but for the most part it's really much self-contained in Edinburgh in particular. And this one we definitely get to kind of travel around with these characters as they're going about different tasks and these type of things. So it is interesting to kind of see these characters in different settings, especially in this time period. We get like Paris, Barcelona, Edinburgh, London, like all these places, and kind of traveling around and kind of the world building itself in terms of the kind of dusting basically you just really tap into the surface of this world and kind of what is the greater mystery within this magic system. And we definitely get that greater expansion in here, which I really enjoyed. It also kind of took me by surprise because it definitely kind of mixes in horror with fantasy. So it was kind of, some stuff was like actually very graphic, and I was like, oh my goodness, and like I can watch like crime shows, like any of those, but this one definitely was aired on the side of kind of horror, which I think around Halloween time this was a great book to read. And I'm definitely really excited. I believe this is going to be a trilogy, so I'm very excited to see what happens next. And one of the things I particularly enjoyed is the blending of the different storylines. Like I said, you're following different characters kind of around the same time frame in terms of what's going on, so you're kind of bouncing around different, you know, perspectives and storylines, but I feel like the author does a really good job of not only weaving in the storylines that you're getting a progression of the overall narrative, but he does it in a way that it doesn't feel like clunky or anything like that, and you get to, you know, spend time with these characters, but the overarching like narrative is, you know, well done, and you kind of get that overarching narrative, and kind of all the storylines coming together at the end was really rewarding to see how things tie in, because there's especially one newer character in here that you're like, you kind of see how she's connected, but you don't see how it's going to tie in with like the main narrative. So it was interesting seeing all the weaving and all that was done. I thought it was really well done, and I definitely really like this. This is definitely like a really standout fantasy series of this year that I've really enjoyed, so I highly recommend it. I know like the first book has mixed reviews on Goodreads, but I think like I don't understand why the reviews are so low. I think a lot of people were comparing it to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I never read that, but I think they're very separate, so I wouldn't compare it. I think if you go in with an open mind, you will really enjoy it, and I love the world. I love some of these characters in here. They're just, I just want to give them a hug because they're going through such terrible things. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and definitely like a really spooky read, which kind of took me by surprise. And I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Lastly, I picked up the audiobook for this one, and it is called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And basically this is tying in kind of teaching of plants, and kind of, she is a botanist, but also someone of indigenous background. So she's kind of weaving in our scientific knowledge and how that ties in with basically indigenous wisdom when it comes to plants and botany. And I thought it was beautifully written. I thought it integrated a lot of scientific studies with the kind of indigenous like intellect and like knowledge and all those things, and how deeply rooted and spiritual kind of the indigenous people are with the world around them, specifically not only to like animals, but also the, you know, the earth, the plants, the trees, you know, all those things, and just how beautifully that was written and articulated. Like, you can just, it made me feel like I kind of opened my eyes, because like, yes, I know I'm aware of the plants and, you know, trees around me, but it just made me kind of open my eyes and more aware of that kind of coexisting relationship that we kind of have with plants that I feel like we don't really think about on a day-to-day basis. So that was really a lot of fun to read about. I do feel like it was slightly disorganized. The sides, there's kind of like side stories or tangents that I felt like went on for too long, and it kind of got to the point where it was just like repetitive. So I feel like this is like, it was a really long audiobook too, but this book is like over like 350 pages, and I feel like maybe 100 pages could have been shaved off on this, just with kind of these side tangents. And I did feel like it was very repetitive, or like the side tangents did tie into what she was talking about, but they just went on far too long. So I feel like it kind of lost its focus a little bit, but I feel like it does raise a really good, you know, conversation about our relationship with the world around us and how science kind of frowns upon the indigenous wisdom of the earth. But she kind of, what some of the things she would talk about is how the indigenous wisdom kind of did prove science wrong, or what scientists were expecting. So it was interesting seeing how she was weaving those two in. But overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And so moving on to the books that I plan on reading in November, I feel like overall, like, I've been kind of just focusing on stuff that can distract me and that is easier to read. So a lot of these, I'm kind of going back to my roots and just doing crime books in particular. I feel like those are stuff that always keep me engaged and help me kind of distract from the chaos of the world right now and just my grief. Currently right now, this book came out at a really good time. It is The Grey Wolf by Louise. I'm currently reading this right now, but this is the newest book in the Inspector Gamache series, which is my favorite series of all time. And I don't want to spoil the plot of this one. I feel like, especially with crime series, I, as a reader, don't really like to know the plot until I dive in. So about halfway through, I'm really enjoying this so far, but basically the premise of this series is that it follows Inspector Gamache, who is head of the homicide department in Montreal, and a lot of his crimes involve a small town or tie in with a small town called Three Pines, and it kind of gives Stars Hollow kind of that found family, found community feeling. And I just really enjoy this. Like I said, it's my favorite series of all time, and this came out a couple days before we had to put Tucker down, so the timing of it kind of worked out, and it's given me a good distraction right now. And kind of a softer, kind of easier read is I'm continuing on with my Bridgerton kind of readathon. So the next book is Eloise's story, which is To Sir Philip with Love, and I'm about like a quarter of the way through this one. I was reading it and then I picked up The Grey Wolf because I'm very excited for it. But this one follow Eloise, who kind of runs away and like was corresponding with this Sir Philip for over a year, and he like kind of offers to be like, oh, do you want to become my wife? So she kind of goes over there to see if it would be a match, and so kind of that's where we're at right now. That's what I'm currently reading. Again, it's also providing a good distraction. It's a light, easy read, and I've been enjoying it so far. Next, kind of continuing on with the crime series. So the next 3 that I'll be talking about are crime series, or like crime books or thriller books. First, I have You by Caroline Kepnes, which I'm surprised I haven't read yet. This was like a darling on BookTube like a long time ago, and it was just one that like always intrigued me, but I just never got around to reading it. But it's interesting because it's told from the perspective of a stalker who's stalking a woman. So it's like, you are doing this, you are doing that, and I kind of just want to go into it. So I know like the general premise, and I know there's a TV show which I haven't watched, but it kind of follows that. So I'm sure all of you have heard this, so I'm not going to dive too much into it. And these are kind of newer releases. One I think came out towards the end of last year, which I haven't picked up yet, but she's one of my favorite authors, and it is The Spy Coast by Tess Gerritsen. And she's the author of the Brazilian Isles series, which is definitely the series I think that got me into kind of crime novels and those type of things. But it says, former spy Maggie Bird came to the seaside village of Purity, Maine, eager to put the past behind her after a mission went tragically wrong. These days, she lives quietly on her chicken farm, still wary of blowback from the events that forced her early retirement. But when a body turns up in Maggie's driveway, she knows it's a message from former foes who haven't forgotten her. Maggie turns to her local circle of old friends, old retirees of the CIA, to help uncover the truth about who is trying to kill her and why this martini club of former spies may be retired and why. This martini club of former spies may be retired, but they still have a few useful skills that they're eager to use again, if only to spice up their rather sedate new lives. So I think this one will be fun. Like I said, I really love Tess Gerritsen. She's really good at kind of writing these thrillers, and I think this one will be interesting with having that kind of spy espionage side or spin to it, so I think that should be fun. And lastly, I think out of the ones, I think this one, I think I will, after I finish the Grey Wolf and the Bridgerton book, I think this one will be one that I'll pick up next, and it is We Solved Murders by Richard Osman. He is the author of the Thursday Murder Club series, which again, it's very wholesome despite it being like a murder mystery and kind of dealing with murder and that dark subject matter. It integrates a lot of warmth and humor, and so I'm hoping that's what he's able to tackle here. I feel like that's what I need right now, and it just sounds really interesting. This is one that has, you know, come out pretty recently that I got, but it says, solving murders, it's a family business. Steve Wheeler is enjoying retired life. He still does the odd bit of investigation work, but he prefers his familiar routines, the pub quiz, his favorite bench, his cat waiting for him at home. His days of adventure are over. Adrenaline is daughter-in-law's Amy's job now. Amy Wheeler thinks adrenaline is good for the soul. Working in private security every day is dangerous. She's currently on a remote island protecting mega best-selling author Rosie Diamito until a dead body and a bag of money mean trouble in paradise. So she sends an SOS to the only person she can trust. So I feel like this one will kind of have that like murder aspect as well, but I'm hoping he kind of integrates a lot of the warmth and humor that I feel like the Thursday Murder Club is known for. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of dive in. Like I said, I feel like I need some distractions right now. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what books you've been reading and all of this fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. You probably won't see me for a little bit. Like I said, I appreciate you guys letting me kind of have the space to take some time off and just kind of focus on other things. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.